I was really shocked to find out that 2018 is only going to be Colombia's fifth ever and only participation in a World Cup. Fifth. Wow. Before 1990, Colombia had only qualified for the World Cup in 1962 in Chile, where they finished in the group stage. It wasn't until less than 30 years ago that they got back to it after such a long time. And in 1990, when Colombia reached Italia that summer, they reached the round of 16th where they finished 14th overall. It was really the 90s generation of the Colombian national team that was arguably their best set of players ever. Who could forget names like Valderrama, the crazy eccentric Rene Higuaita as a goalkeeper. And in 1994 and 1998, this Colombian side, who many will forget, were considered a contender to get to the semifinals of USA 94, France 98, did not advance past the group stage in either edition. And the former was particularly through tragedy, because in the 1994 World Cup, Colombia scored an own goal in a 2-1 loss against the United States when defender Pablo Escobar accidentally netted a failed clearance into the back of his own net. And we know the story, what happened after that. Unfortunately, he was gunned down back home in the streets of Bogota. And once the 90s faded and Colombia wasn't back on the main international scene for almost 20 years, it was a tale of a team with such lost potential and such an extremely talented group of players. And it ended in the saddest way possible. And in 2014, Colombia got back to the World Cup for the first time in 16 years, what was only their fourth ever World Cup. And they finished in second place in South American qualifying. Since then, in between 1998 and 2014, the only thing Colombia did as of note was win the 2001 Copa America, which proved to be their first and only title in the South American regional tournament, and that was won on home soil. 2014, they were actually seeded when they returned to the World Cup, 9 points in their group games, and they went on a run to the quarterfinals, where they ultimately finished in 5th place in the tournament, by far Colombia's best finish ever in a World Cup. And with a new generation of players led by manager Jose Pekerman, they had given the country something to smile about to put the ghosts of 94 and 98 behind them. Colombia qualified for a second successive World Cup for Russia 2018. This time, though, they finished in 4th place in South American qualifying with just 7 wins, 6 draws, and 5 losses, 27 points in total, and they clinched it on the final match day with a 1-1 draw on the road against Peru. They just narrowly avoided the playoff spot ahead of Los Incas, and they booked South America's last direct spot to the World Cup. Now, what's important to say about Colombia in 2018, plain and simple, they are not as good as they were in 2014. They're not. And it reflects in their qualification campaign when they did not pick up a single victory over the top 3 teams in the CONMEBOL standings, Brazil, Uruguay, and Argentina. Actually, when you look at it, even teams that are below Colombia in the table, Peru, Chile, Paraguay, Ecuador, Bolivia, and Venezuela, every single one of them, every other team in South America, picked up a victory against the best, first 3 finishers in the region, except Colombia. The way that Colombia qualified was that they racked up the score, the tally, against lesser sides in the region. They lost to Brazil away and tied them at home. They tied Uruguay at home and lost away. And they lost both matches home and away to Argentina. They're actually notorious as being the only country in South America for 2018 to have not beat any team in the top 3, as I said. That's quite astounding, and it's worrisome should Colombia get far into this tournament and they want to go on a deeper run, say the semifinals, and they come up against a side like Germany, Brazil, Spain. However, Colombia did luck out in the World Cup draw in December. They placed with Poland, Senegal, and Japan, and in their sister group contains Belgium, England, Panama, and Tunisia. And because groups G and H are sister groups, two of those teams are guaranteed to get to the quarterfinals. And because Colombia qualified without having beaten one of the top three sides in South America, they might want to count their stars considering that they avoided heavy hitters in the World Cup compared to what they could have gotten. Still, even though Colombia are not as good as they were, not as solid as they were in 2014, I still believe they have too much depth in a group that they far outclass to not only advance, but to top the group. I do think they have more credentials and options off the bench than Poland or Senegal do, and especially Japan. And I certainly feel they should finish top of Group H. And another run to a repeat quarterfinals is entirely not just possible, but maybe probable, because you'd have to think they would come up against an England or a Tunisia in the round of 16, and Tunisia they should beat. England, that's pretty much a coin toss, though I would give the slight edge to Colombia in that sense. So let's take a look at their squad. They're still under manager Jose Peckerman, who took them to the 2014 World Cup quarterfinals. Goalkeepers David Ospina, Camilo Vargas, Jose Fernando. Defenders Davinson Sanchez, Yerry Mina, Santiago Arias, Christian Zapata, some familiar names from the previous World Cup. Frank Frabra, Johan Mujica, and Oscar Murillo. Midfielders James Rodriguez, Juan Guillermo, Carlos Sanchez, Wilmar Barrios, Jefferson Lema, Mateus Uribe, Abel Aguilar, and forwards Falcao Garcia, Luis Muriel, Carlos Baca, Jose Izquierdo, and Miguel Borja. Now, two interesting things here to note. A lot of Colombians will say that a majority of their creativity in midfield comes through James Rodriguez, but they also have Falcao, who is returning, who was absent in the 2014 World Cup due to injury. And we know that the couple of seasons that he's been having with Monaco in the last 2 years, 2016 to 2017 Champions League season, Radamel Falcao was absolutely clutch for Monaco, helping them get to the semifinals of last year's Champions League. And this time, barring any major setback yet again, he will be playing for Colombia up front, and he will give them other options going forward as far as goal-scoring prospects are concerned. Now, as I said, Colombia, I do think they have the most depth in this group, but they have shown signs of a dip in form ever since securing qualification against Peru. They played 4 friendlies since then, including a 2-1 loss to South Korea, a 4-0 win over China, a very impressive come-from-behind victory, however, against France, 3-2, and then 2 stalemate 0-0 draws against Australia and Egypt in the last couple of weeks. Now, aside from their standout 3-2 victory against France, where they rallied late to secure the last-minute victory, they've been a little bit stagnant in their preparation for Russia 2018. I don't feel they will be able to get away with it if they want to progress beyond the quarterfinals for the first time ever, as their path certainly presents an opportunity for them to do so. However, can they get away with it in a group like Group H and with a neighboring group like Group G? Most likely. Quarterfinals are a realistic aim for this team yet again, and on their best day, they can still beat anybody in the world, even if they are not up to par to the side of 4 years ago.